What's up, guys? Rick here with your DFS preview for this week's PGA Championship. I'm going to take you through a data-driven research process for this week's golf course, Oak Hill, and basically every player in the field, or at least the most interesting ones based on the analytics and the stats. Two quick items before we jump into this. Number one, clearly I'm not in the home studio, so apologize for any audio or video things that are normally better, but I am boots on the ground in Rochester, right? So I'll be out at Oak Hill all week, getting a feel for this golf tournament, talking to players, coming back with a little bit of inside information. So you're going to want to watch the rest of the content this week, especially the Wednesday live chat. That'll be on the Rick Run Good YouTube channel, because hopefully I'll have a lot of great intel the day before, after spending a couple days here at the golf course. The second thing is, because this is a very exciting major championship, I wanted to do something fun. I wanted to give something away. So what I settled on is this pinned rangefinder that I have. This is essentially brand new. I got this for rangefinder testing, and I used all the rangefinders for like 15 minutes. And this one, I just don't have a need for. It's great. It's got a nice big display, but like I can't have 5 rangefinders. So here it is. It's this pinned rangefinder. It's got the slope. It's got, everything you would need. I'll just give it away this week, like I have been with some other fun stuff in the last couple of weeks. So there's only really one way to get in. If you are subscribed to my newsletter, which is a weekly email that I send out usually every Tuesday morning with stats and information. It's free. If you're subscribed to that, you're already entered. If you are not, there's a link in the description. It's rickrungood.com/newsletter. Sign up. If you're on the list, you're in, and I'll draw somebody next week, and I'll ship them the rangefinder. Okay, we need to start with the golf course, and there's a lot to talk about, so let's jump right into this. Okay, here's my website, rickrungood.com. Everything you see is going to be from my website. It's a giant database for fantasy golf and golf betting. It's all data driven. I encourage you to sign up and take advantage of it. So a couple of interesting items here. Now, because this is a major championship that we it rotates, right? There's not always going to be, or rarely is there going to be, a lot of statistical analysis that you can put together in terms of the correlated stats for success, like we would do for every other event. And of course the Masters, because it never moves from Augusta National. So this is something I'm pretty proud of. This is a statistical model that I generated to basically work in the same way of having more data and putting it into the correlated stats. And what I did is I took a variety of other PGA of America setups, some comp courses, some overhead information, which I'll show you in a second, from the satellite imagery, compared it to other golf courses, and basically came up with this model. And what you need to know is a couple of things here. Whatever you knew or thought about Oak Hill in the past, just forget it. Just Men in Black, wash your brain from it, because it's not going to matter. This is a completely different golf course. They did a phenomenal restoration a couple of years ago. They removed hundreds of trees. The sight lines are completely different. Every green is brand new. There is new bunkering. It's completely different. It is completely different. So you do not need to look back at any other event that has ever been played at Oak Hill, because it is not going to be of note. The big takeaway for this, and I'll show you the satellite imagery in a second that I've been mapping out for the last couple of weeks, is that this golf course is going to be long and difficult. It is going to remind me a lot of Bethpage Black. It's going to remind me a lot of Winged Foot. It is a golf course that, despite removing a lot of the trees that were left are very strategic. The tee boxes that were built are kind of annoying, right? It's a classical golf course where it's long and straight out ahead of you. There's not a ton of super bendy dog legs or anything like that, but like that you are going to have to maybe play a little shape off each one of these tees, and it makes the fairways smaller. The fairways are already very small. The rough is already very thick. The hazards that you have out there are very well placed, and if you are not long enough to get past those hazards, you are just playing with fire, essentially. I'll show you what I mean in just a second. So I truly believe a classic long northeast major championship can only be won by, let's say, 12 different golfers, right? I think you're going to need to be big. I think you're going to need to be strong. I think you're going to need to be able to move it. You think about what happened at Winged Foot, and I'll just show you the satellite image here. I know, you guys know I've been mapping out this golf course recently. So let me show you what I'm looking at here. Okay, so here's the satellite imagery. This is number one right here. Okay, so the way that these are three new bunkers on the left-hand side. So this portion of the fairway here, this fairway is, oh my God, 20 yards wide, something like that. It is, let's see, 20 and a half yards wide. Okay, so basically 21 yards wide, and that's at 305. So that is right where the majority of the field is going to drive this, right? And if you are in one of these fairway bunkers, those are, it's hard to tell from the satellite image, but they're fairly deep. So depending on where you're at in these fairway bunkers, you might have to lay up in front of this creek. Now you do, I mean, of course it's 20 yards wide here to the fairway, but you've got probably another 20 yards of including bunker, rough, and to the cart path. So you could miss well left here. The problem is you're just going to have very thick rough. The one thing to note about the rough is that you have, I believe it to be a Winged Foot situation where the more errant you are off the tee is not necessarily more of a penalty. Missing 1 yard off the fairway and missing 20 yards off the fairway is basically the same thing, right? You're going to have the same lie. Now, in years past, where there would have been 600 more trees on this property, you can see how open it is now. You might have had to punch out and play around, but now without a lot of those trees, you might have a line of sight to the green. So I believe clubhead speed, power is going to be pretty important. You look at this creek that meanders throughout the entirety of this golf course. That will come into play, like you see it here on a couple of these drives, where if you miss it a little bit right and you're not as long, you're not as accurate, you're going to end up in this water. This is a very demanding driving golf course. So here's the second tee. Here's the number 2 tee box down here by the creek, and you can see this is not really a dog leg, but it bends out to the right. These trees are kind of overhanging, making it feel a little bit more claustrophobic. If you miss this fairway to the right, which is easy to do considering it's only 20 yards wide here at 300 yards, you are either in one of these deep bunkers, you are behind this tree, you're in one of the left-hand bunkers, you're in this thick rough. It is going to be a very, and it's just more of the same everywhere, right? It's just going to be a very demanding golf course. Look how open this par 5 is now with the trees that they removed, but it is still this is where people are going to have to play to, this 305, 310. But if you are able to carry a lot of these hazards, you are putting yourself in a much better situation. And after that, I think a lot of energy will be spent this week on driving the ball. And I think that's warranted, right? I mean, this is going to be a very, very demanding golf course off the tee. But after that, it's going to continue to be a true test of golf, right? We've got a situation where, these greens are smaller than tour average, like 4,500 square feet on average. There are usually ridges in most of them. There is the natural undulation that you are getting around this golf course, and just the demand to be precise. There is the restoration created a lot more pin positions that were not available in previous years, and they're going to take advantage of them. There's a great hole. I can't remember what hole it is, but it's basically the green is essentially almost like a triangle. And if the pin is on the front, it's like 40 yards wide. If the pin is in the middle, it's like 20 yards wide. And if the pin is in the back, it's like 10 yards wide. And it creates a situation where they're going to be able to put pins in different spots and kind of punish you or ask you to be aggressive or ask you to be conservative. So it does not stop after the tee shot is hit. And then, again, we're compounding things here. You're going to miss a lot of greens. There's going to be a lot of missed greens. You're going to have to be able to get up and down. Some of these bunkers, a lot of the bunkers around the putting surfaces are quite deep. I can show you a couple of images there. So here's the third hole, for an example. It's a long par 3, and look at the depth of these bunkers that are protecting this putting surface, right? What is that? 3.5, 4 feet high in some situations, in some areas. And you see that a lot. Like here's 4. You're seeing a lot of elevated greens, slightly elevated greens with deep bunkering. So you are going to have, I mean, look at this. Every single hole, it feels like, is protected by these bunkers or a green that is, 3 or 4 feet above you. It's going to be quite challenging. Plus, if you're short-sided out of the thick rough, you've got to have a pretty elite short game. So this is going to ask you to be very well-rounded. That's something you're going to hear me say a lot this week. Yes, I'll put an emphasis on driving. Yes, I'll put an emphasis on distance, but I do think you need to be well-rounded. This is a course and a championship that the PGA of America has basically honed in. They want, 5 or 6 under par to be the winning score. Something like that. Par is going to be a good score almost constantly around this place. So it is, I believe, going to be a complete examination of the golf game. The way they did I'm very excited for this one. I have to admit, this golf course has bite. It is not tricked up in any way. It is restored to its original design. It is such a cool course. I cannot wait to see how it plays out over the course of these 4 days at this championship. But it's going to be stellar. Now, to go back to the types of golfers. So again, I'm quite confident that the winner of this tournament will be one of like the top 12 players in the world, specifically the longer ones, your Rorys, your Jon Rahms, your Scotty Schefflers, you throw maybe Brooks Koepka into the mix. Some of these other guys, we'll obviously talk about them, but the way that the model ran out. So again, this is a modeled version of this correlated stats where it has driving distance ranking 5th, meaning that there's only 4 other courses on the PGA Tour schedule in which driving distance will be more important. Driving accuracy 10th, which means there's only 9 other courses in which driving accuracy is more important. I tweeted out last week saying, hey, I've been mapping out Oak Hill. You're going to need to drive it well. And somebody replied, accuracy or distance? And the answer is like, yes, like both. You're going to need both. I would prefer distance over accuracy if you only have one. Look at approach. And this is also, I thought this was interesting as well. When you start looking at other events like Winged Foot, other events like Bethpage Black, a similar type setups, approach play kind of shocks me here. I think on the surface, I knew it was going to be important, but to say there's only 3 other courses on the PGA Tour schedule in which approach is going to be more important. You see around the green is 15th, putting is 15th, a complete examination of tests. So if you take this information and you look down at the last 36 rounds for the players that best fit these metrics, who do we find? Yeah, no surprise. 1 and 2 are Scotty Scheffler and Jon Rahm. They get a big boost for their ability to play off the tee. They get a big boost for their short game. They get a big boost for everything, right? They're phenomenal golfers. Look who's number 3, Wyndham Clark, $7,500. Makes sense, right? He's long. He's become one of the better approach players in the world. His short game has always been adequate. Great fit. Jason Day is 4th. Max Homa, believe it or not, 5th. He offers a well-rounded game. Tony Finau, Xander Schauffele, Nikolai Højgaard, Patrick Cantlay. Rory McIlroy doesn't show up until about 15th on this list. Gets a knock for his putting. Hasn't played as well in the last 36 rounds as some of these other guys. If we turn this into like last 100 rounds or something like that, I bet you Rory flies up the board here quite a bit. Am I speaking out of turn or am I right? No, I'm right. He becomes the 3rd best player. So that makes a lot of sense there. So you can mess around with the number of rounds that you want to look at, but I'm very proud and kind of confident in this model. And I'm really excited because you will be exposed if you have flaws in your game around Oak Hill. And I think you should be. But I also think it's going to be fair. I think that great shots are going to be rewarded. Bad shots are going to be punished. That's what I want in a fair major championship. Let's dive into the players. Take a look at the cheat sheet. The cheat sheet, here it is with 5 golfers over $10,000, and they're all well warranted. We are getting no discounts this week at the PGA Championship. Jon Rahm, Scotty Scheffler, Rory McIlroy, Collin Morikawa, Brooks Koepka. There is a very good chance that I just named the winner of this golf tournament. The big 3, let's go there. These are the 3 with the shortest odds. Then there's a gap to everybody else in the betting market. That's Rahm, it's Scotty Scheffler, it's Rory McIlroy. We are splitting hairs here. They all drive it beautifully. They all have the upside to win. The guy that I am most partial to is Scotty Scheffler. Another top 5 finish last week in which he was a 0 with the putter. What are you seeing? A stretch of, 14 tournaments in a row where he's finished inside the top 15. A stretch of golf where there is nobody in the world who is hitting it from tee to green as good as Scotty Scheffler is. The floor is higher than anybody in the world right now. And even with this, during this stretch of really great finishes, he hasn't been putting it all that well, right? .07 at the AT&T. Byron Nelson on the positive side, T5. He loses a half a stroke at the RBC Heritage. That's still worth a T11. He loses 4 strokes at the Masters, finishes T10. I could go on and on and on. If you look at the power rankings for everybody in the last 36 rounds, Jon Rahm, the number 1 player in the world, Scottie Scheffler right behind. The only 2 other golfers gaining at least 2 or more strokes to the field over that time are Patrick Cantlay and Xander Schauffele. But look at the way that Scottie is lapping the rest of the field in strokes gained tee to green. Patrick Cantlay's been phenomenal. He's been unreal. He's at 1.98. Scottie Scheffler is at 2.6. That is basically 2/3 of a stroke better than the second best golfer. So the gap between Scottie Scheffler from tee to green to Patrick Cantlay from tee to green is the same as Cantlay to basically Wyndham Clark, Xander Schauffele. It's like 15 more guys down the list. So this is where I'm planting my flag. I'm certainly not going out on a limb here. Scottie Scheffler is one of the best players in the world. I just think that the way that he is able to make par from seemingly anywhere, a short game of an angel, is going to be so valuable around Oak Hill. Like it's phenomenal stuff. Also, what a lot of people are probably not realizing is how dominant Scottie Scheffler has been at major championships. So just kind of go, and I'll put something in my newsletter for this week about all the best guys in major championships. But I'm just going to pull up his major championship history here. And what am I forgetting? The Masters, of course. Yeah, that would be a pretty good one to include. So let's look at this. He missed the cut at the PGA Championship last year. Outside of that finish, his worst finish going back to August of 2020 is a T21. I'll say that again. He's played like 12 major championships, and in 11 of them, he has been T21 or better since the 2020 PGA Championship. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 top 10 finishes during that stretch. It's only a stretch of what? 11 major championship starts, because these events allow the best tee to green players to separate themselves from the rest of the field. So I plant my flag with Scottie Scheffler. If you think Jon Rahm or Rory McIlroy is a better option, I am not going to kill you for that. Jon Rahm is the best driver of the golf ball in the world, in my opinion, in both terms of accuracy and distance. Rory might have better distance, but he does not have the accuracy of Jon Rahm. He does not have necessarily the shot shaping on command that Jon Rahm has. You see it in the statistics. Jon Rahm will separate himself around Oak Hill with the driver. Outside of that, do you have a little bit of question marks about the longer term second shot stuff? Yeah, maybe you do, but I don't think it's too big of a concern, especially when you realize, hey, last time we saw him was the runner-up finish in Mexico, where he didn't even strike it all that well. The T15 in a stacked field at the RBC Heritage, then the win at the Masters. So again, I think it's very close between these three. And then Rory, I suppose, if we got to Wednesday and the sentiment on Rory was very much down in the dumps, and we were getting a significant discount on Rory, which I don't think that's going to happen. But if we were, would not mind pivoting to Rory for game theory purposes, right? So I'll bet Scottie Scheffler. But if we get into a situation where we are playing the game theory game, Rory might end up being that option. So we'll kind of see how it plays out. The back-to-back weeks where he's lost 3 strokes on approach are not great for Rory, but he's still got a great short game. Again, drives it just as well as about anybody in the field. So right now for me, it's Scottie, it's Jon Rahm, it's Rory McIlroy, basically in that order. All 3 of them should have a phenomenal chance to win this golf tournament, and Oak Hill on paper sets up beautifully for all 3 of these guys. I think that's probably not the insight you need, right? I mean, I think everybody is going to be pretty excited about those 3. The other 2 in the 10K range, I think, are a lot more interesting. Collin Morikawa at 10.3 is in a very kind of awkward pricing. I'm actually surprised to see him this high. I thought this could have been Patrick Cantlay. I thought this could have been Xander Schauffele. I thought this could have been a variety of other names, but a lot of respect being played to Collin Morikawa right now as the 4th most expensive golfer on this slate. And it has not been, well, I guess it's been a good year, but not a great year. It's been a disappointing year, but a positive year. It's been strange, right? He hasn't cashed the win, but he's got a couple of top finishes at Torrey Pines, at Tournament of Champions, at Riviera, played well enough with the Players, played well enough at the Masters, but then misses the cut at the Zurich. I can throw that out. It's a team event with Max Homa. Doesn't matter. But then misses the cut at the Wells Fargo Championship. And the liability here for Colin is that he might just lose 4 strokes with the putter. That's the real liability here. I worry that he does not have the distance nor the club head speed to kind of get himself around Oak Hill in a positive manner. He often plays out of the fairways, the third most accurate driver on the PGA Tour in terms of how many fairways he hits, and that is what he is going to need to do. He will need to do that. If he is not playing out of the fairway, he's pretty much cooked. 115th on tour in club head speed. It's 114 miles an hour. I would take that, but when you are trying to hit 4-iron out of thick rough, it's going to be very, very difficult. The other thing is, one of his best attributes is how small he misses by when he does miss distance from edge of fairway. And again, that doesn't really matter here. So I think the path to Colin Morikawa is requirement of playing out of the fairway, being the best approach player in the world, which he can be, no problem there, and then getting a +3 putting week. That's really the path for Morikawa to the top of the leaderboard. It's a lot more narrow than his peers. Brooks Koepka is the other guy here, and I think what ends up happening on these live guys is a couple of things. One, the bigger names have been playing well, right? Dustin Johnson just won last week in Tulsa, and Brooks played well again with the T5. Cam Smith was in the playoff. You're getting these bigger names towards the top of the board, and because you're only really getting access to playing them 4 times a year, they're generally more owned than they should be. I think that the pendulum might have swung a bit too far on Brooks Koepka, right? I think he has a great chance this week. He is really the one who said, like, I show up at major championships and think that only 12 guys can win this. And that's kind of exactly how I feel about this event. You think about Bethpage Black and Shinnecock and Winged Foot and places that he should be having a lot of success at are very much comp courses to this. And I don't need to show you the major championship record, but I will just for kicks here because we're here talking about it. Unfortunately, I think he is going to be the combination of popular and expensive, which is generally not the path that I like to go down. Popular and expensive. I would prefer not popular but expensive. I'd be fine with even popular but cheap. This is probably going to be a combination on DraftKings that's not going to end up working out for me. Now, will I play Brooks in one and dones? Well, probably exclusively, right? The value of having someone come in and be one of the top 5 betting favorites, and you only get a chance to use them once out of every 4. Wait, you only get a chance to use them like 4 times a year is really, really valuable. I don't know where I was going with that, but you get my point. So I think there are probably better formats than DraftKings for Brooks, but this is setting up to be a pretty stellar profile. What I will show you just while we're looking at this is I'll just show you everybody in this field dating back to 2016 and just show you all the major championships here. I've started alluding to that already, and I'm going to continue to talk about it. So I'll just show you on the Holy Grail here how you can just select multiple tournaments, and I'll just choose the 4 major championships. And you could do this based on strength of field. I could actually open this up and do strength of field numbers, and I can include the Players Championship, and maybe I include Bay Hill or the elevated events or something like that. But since the start of 2016, no one has been better at major championships than Brooks Koepka has. Now look at the names here, right? They're all quite expensive. Brooks, 10,100, 2.29 strokes gained per round. Scotty Scheffler, half the sample size, but still a big sample size, 50 rounds, 2.05. Here's Colin Morikawa, right? This is a kind of also another reason why I think he got that boost in salary. I just do not think that Oak Hill is as good of a setup as TPC Harding Park was. I don't think that Oak Hill is as good of a setup as his Open Championship victory, where there was literally no win. I don't think this is necessarily going to set up well for him. DJ is 4th, 8,800. He is going to be one of the most popular golfers on the slate this week. We'll talk about that. And then Xander Schauffele at 99 rounds out the big 5, and then Rory and Rahm are 6 and 7. So you're really at major championships, because of the tests that they are, you see the best guys play well over time. Yeah, maybe Jason Duffner steals one, maybe Lucas Glover steals one, maybe whatever. But this, over time, these guys are getting to the top of the leaderboard often, way more than they should. The 9K range. This is where things start to get really interesting, right? Where everyone's basically in agreement on the big three. I think that Patrick Cantlay and Xander Schauffele both could have argued to be very much in that $10,000 range. So I'm going to try to get as much exposure to Xander, to Cantlay, to Tony Finau as possible out of this range. So we'll talk through a couple of these guys real quick. Cantlay is probably a very close third for me out of the three that I just mentioned. So we'll start with him. He is longer than you realize. He is an unbelievable driver of the ball. He's completely well-rounded. If you start looking at the power rankings, I love the phenomenal tee to green numbers. I already showed you that 1.98, second best in this field, but he also gains a little bit with the putter. And we have seen him get hot with the flat stick on some of these Northeast bent grass greens where he can just start going nuts and start rolling everything in. So love the idea of Patrick Cantlay. The only knock for him really is that lack of major championship success. Now, is that a small sample size? Has it been overblown? Well, here he is, 1.18 strokes gained per round in major championships dating back to 2016. That is the worst of anyone in this field who is $9,400 or more. It is actually, when you go a little bit further of guys who are like 8,500 or more, it's still pretty bad. Like Max Homa, Sungjae Im, Cam Smith, all have not had the level of success in major championship as their peers. So that's the one concern there. The guy that I really enjoy this week, and I don't get a lot of exposure to Xander Schauffele, is Xander Schauffele, because he has everything firing on all cylinders right now. The 8 strokes that he gained ball striking at the Wells Fargo Championship, and then he adds 7 in the short game categories. And that's what Xander does. Xander is an incredibly well-rounded golfer. I want to, there's so many ways we could dive into this. I truly believe that this will be, like, we can make this much simpler. The guys who have no flaws in their game are gonna find success. And that's the epitome of Xander Schauffele, right? You wouldn't, if I asked you who the best driver was, you'd never say Xander. If I asked you who the best approach player it was, you'd never say Xander. Same thing in every category. You'd never say Xander. Like, Xander is not the best at anything. He's just very good at everything. And his ability to make par around a major championship venue, it is obviously saved him, or excuse me, has provided him a lot of success at major championships before for a reason. That's how this works, right? He's just so good everywhere. And when the winning score is going to be 5 under par and you got to make 50 pars in a week or 60 pars in a week or whatever, right? Like, he's there to get it done. So he gets me very excited. And then the other one is Tony Finau. I don't think people realize how good Tony Finau has been. Let's go through this a little bit. So what are we looking for out of a potential winner this week at Oak Hill? Well, you got to be able to drive it far. Okay, check. Finau has unlimited power. We need somebody who is great on the second shot. Well, last 36 rounds. Now there's a couple guys who have much smaller sample sizes because they play on live or whatnot. But he is gaining a stroke per round on approach. It's an elite number that only few other guys can tout. How about a sturdy around the green game? Yeah, he's a positive there. Actually, pretty good positive, nearly a quarter of a stroke per round. And can he roll the rock? Yeah, he can. Another basically quarter of a stroke per round. So we've got a well-rounded golfer who is playing the best golf of his life, who has had a ton of success at majors, right? He has not closed one out yet, but he's had a ton of success at major championships. Here's his record, a 1.4 strokes gained per round over 90 rounds. And what I think the other thing that people are forgetting is he has won 4 times since he last played a PGA Championship. Think about that, right? He piled up a ton of wins last summer and in the fall, and then just recently in Mexico. It's been 4 wins since the last time he played the PGA Championship. So I think that he's got the ceiling to get this done. He's got it all. So very, very, very excited about the way that Tony Finau shapes up. The rest of this 9K range, Cam Young is going to be incredibly popular. You know, he is a bomber with all the skills who is from New York. And I just think he's going to end up being too popular for me. You know, a golfer trying to break through for their first win to be a major championship would be quite rare. Not that it's impossible. This guy's incredibly talented. I do worry a little bit about some of the leaks coming back into his game from the short game categories. We saw this a little bit earlier this year where when he struggles, you start to see the short game fall apart a little bit. And I'm not saying it's falling apart, but it could be. Right, he's losing 2 strokes with the putter at Harbor Town, 3 in total in the short game categories. He doesn't gain anything with the flat stick at the Wells Fargo. I mean, he's a very good putter. So to not see that drop, you start to get a little bit concerned. And then we know, and we've seen this before, it kind of leaks into other parts of his game. He loses 3 strokes on approach to the Wells Fargo Championship. So that is possible. And I just think he's going to end up being a little bit too popular for me. The other 2 at the bottom here. So I don't know if people are truly paying attention. I track 6 tours on RickRunGood.com, but I don't track the KPGA, the Korean PGA. Sungjae just won an event over there. You can decide how much, like literally last week, you can decide how valuable that is to you. He was about plus 275 to win it. So think about the equivalent of John Rahm winning in Mexico this year. He finished second, but that level of favoritism for Sungjae. He goes out and he gets the job done, and he has been piling up all these great finishes before that. T8 at the Wells Fargo Championship, T7 at RBC Heritage, top 20s abound. He is long, he is straight, he is well-rounded. I get it. No problem there if you want to go to Sungjae. Victor Hovland, I think I've spent a lot of time dissecting Oak Hill this week, and what you're seeing off the tee from Victor is going to be a weapon. You know, he's gained multiple strokes off the tee in 4 straight starts and in 8 of 9. And the one that he didn't gain multiple strokes, he gained 1.8. So he's likely to gain multiple strokes off the tee this week. He's going to be able to avoid a lot of those bunkers. He's going to be able to avoid a lot of those situations. The only concern I have, and it's not a bad thing, Victor's very aggressive on a second shot. Very, very aggressive. And when that goes right, it goes really right. And when that goes wrong, it can go very wrong, especially at a golf course like this. There will be spots where Oak Hill will tempt you. It will beg you. It will try to seduce you into going at the stick, and the play is not going at the stick, right? Now, if he can dial that back a little bit, play to the center of the greens, get himself on the putting surfaces because he's such a great putter, or good enough putter. I shouldn't say statistically he's a slightly above average putter where things can go south. I think that's a good sign. I would then start to worry though if he starts missing greens, starts getting in those deep greenside bunkers, starts getting into some of those short grass areas beyond some of the greens, that could be a bit troublesome. It's not a ton of short grass areas like we saw at Southern Hills where everything was shaved down. There will be thick grass around these greens, but it could lead to some awkward situations. So slightly bullish there on Victor. I'm going to bet him because that's what I do constantly. As we enter the 8K range, I'm going to show you a couple of things about golfers and some things that we need to talk about. But one thing that we do need to talk about is that this stat right here, as of right now, half of you watching this are not subscribed to this channel. So there's probably like 5,000-6,000 people who are watching this who are not subscribed. I think we've built a good enough rapport here, and I do these videos and put a lot of effort into it every week that you can help me out. It's free to you. Hit the subscribe button, and we'll continue to do more great stuff in the future. But it shocks me that half of the people that listen on a regular basis are not subscribed. So throw me a bone here and help me out a little bit. The 8K range. Wow. So we got 2 guys at the top of the 8K range who just upped their value in a big way. Remember, pricing for the PGA Championship came out last Friday. So Jason Day winning at the Byron Nelson was not factored into it. Dustin Johnson winning the Live Golf event not factored into it. So we all boom. I've got 2 very popular guys flying out at the top of the 8K range for sure. Dustin Johnson will be one of the most popular golfers on the slate. I think that's fair to say, right? An $8,800 major champion who has done incredible things right here, 1.89 strokes gained per round in majors since 2016, especially at setups like US Opens and PGA Championships and stuff like that. Like this is his kind of setup that he's going to be popular, and he's coming off of the win at Live Golf and the dominance that he has basically had on that circuit. And then Jason Day, he foreshadowed that win quite a bit, didn't he? It was the miscut at the Wells Fargo Championship, but it was a pretty good miscut. He loses 2 strokes on approach, which is something he hadn't done in quite some time, and he actually gained strokes to the field. He missed the cut on the number, not that big of a deal, but the rolling of top 20s, the well-rounded golf leading into it, I think is pretty special stuff. So J Day will be popular. These are probably 2 guys that, again, I'm gonna get priced out on here. They're gonna be probably a bit too popular for me. I would opt for DJ over Jason Day if I had to play one of them. But these are 2 guys I'm probably gonna use as an opportunity to pivot to some of these other really good names in the 8s. So I think the first that comes to mind here is Tyrrell Hatton. And you have to go back and look at the power rankings here and realize the level of golf that he's playing. This is the 9th best golfer in the field over the last 36 rounds, where he's the first guy priced in that anything below $9,000. Well, you get Wyndham Clark at 7,500, but you get my point, right? Compared to his peers, I mean, he's been better statistically just in terms of raw averages than Rory McIlroy and Brooks Koepka have been in their last 36. And he's doing it continually in the best ways possible. This is a well-rounded golfer. Gained strokes across the board at the AT&T Byron Nelson. Gained strokes across the board at the Wells Fargo Championship. Gained in 3 out of 4 categories at the RBC Heritage. If you put a 1 here, or even another top 5 at the top of this most recent results, it would not be surprising at all. Let's look at his major championship history here, because on paper he plays. You think about where he's played well, right? Bay Hill, right? That type of setup, which is very difficult. You think that's pretty good. He's been kind of hit or miss. He's played a lot of majors, right? He's gained a half a stroke per round. That's probably not good enough for the caliber of golfer that he is, but his last 4 have been pretty decent. T34 at the Masters, T11 at the Open Championship. He made the cut at the US Open, finished 56th, and he finished 13th at last year's PGA Championship. So 2 top 15s in his last year's worth of major championships, and without missing a cut. Now, he did have a stretch here from 2020 to 2021 where he missed a bunch of cuts, but I think he is someone that is playing much better golf now than he was in probably leading up to any of those major championships. And then Sam Burns, I'm just kind of a believer on, right? I'm looking at the raw talent and saying there's no reason for Sam Burns to not eventually have major championship success. And he's starting to get a little bit better. I'll pull him up here. He's been a little bit better than Tyrrell Hatton at majors. He's played much fewer of them, but he's made 4 cuts in a row. He's got a T20 at last year's PGA Championship, a T29 at the Masters, getting better, can get hot with the flat stick. I like that. But to me, he's just a modern golfer, right? Kind of strong, hits it far. You're starting to see well-rounded natures in his game, a little bit more reliant on the putter than I would like. But there was a time where he was a top 20 approach player in the world, and he hits it far enough. So I'm just a believer in Sam Burns. I'm not going to go out of my way to get every ounce of exposure to him, but someone that I think if you are getting an opportunity and we see, if we see this 8K range just piling on to J-Day and Dustin Johnson at the top and leaving everybody else kind of untouched, we go to the rest of these guys. I think that would be the X factor range that would probably win a lot of money this week. As we get into this 7K range, if you were really feeling frisky, you could go to the Holy Grail and just look up the results for guys on Donald Ross golf courses, right? That idea. I mean, Donald Ross is such a great architect of the 1920s, and the idea, or probably even earlier than that, the turn of the century, and the idea that some guys, and there's so many courses, so many Donald Ross courses out there, tend to play better. So there's small sample sizes, but like Tom Kim, 8 rounds, Taylor Moore, 8 rounds. We'll talk about Taylor Moore in a second. But like, look, Brooks Koepka is the first guy with a bunch of rounds as a sample size who has played well on Donald Ross golf courses, 1.93. Rory at 1.83. Tony Finau, 1.75. Sung Jae, Matt Kuchar, Victor Hovland. I mean, right? Like demanding some of these courses demanding great driving of the golf ball. There's no surprise that these guys that show up, Keegan Bradley, Cam Davis, Justin Thomas, Thomas Peters, what do they all do well? They all drive the ball well. Matt Kuchar is kind of the outlier there. Webb Simpson's kind of the outlier there, but the rest of them are pretty strong drivers of the golf ball, which I think is worth noting. You go to that 7K range and you see someone like Taylor Moore. Taylor Moore, it's hard at this point in his career. What does he have? Under 50 career PGA Tour starts. I mean, he might have 35 career PGA Tour starts, something like that, to understand who he is and what he's going to be. But man, he was playing great golf to start 2023. He wins the Valspar. He doesn't really slow down. That gets him into the Masters. He finishes T39. That's the first major championship he ever played. RBC Heritage stacked field, goes T11 there. Has a great run at Zurich with his partner. I don't even care about that. And then gains 5.5 strokes ball strike at the Wells Fargo Championship. You know, if you go to the Holy Grail, and I don't know the answer to this, but I bet it's going to be pretty impressive. And let me get this Donald Ross filter off here. But if we just look at everybody in this field since January 1st of 2023, I bet you Taylor Moore is near the top of the list. And I'll get rid of like Champions Tour stuff or Asian Tour stuff. I'll leave Euro, Korn Ferry, PGA, and Live. Euro, Live, Korn Ferry, PGA. Here's Taylor Moore. 1.4 strokes gained per round. It's not basically, it is the same as Ricky Fowler. It is better than Max Homa. It is better than Jordan Spieth. It is better than Cam Smith and Colin Morikawa. It's like the 12th or 14th best in this field. That is how good he has been, and he's doing it in a really strong way. I told you, this is going to be his PGA Championship debut, but very, very strong, impressive golfer that I think is blossoming into something special. He's $7,800. The sick part is we got the Wyndham Clark win kind of too soon here, right? You know, he goes out, he wins the Wells Fargo Championship. This is a special stat profile. You know, it's rare to get a guy who's been a professional for 5 or 6 years to get on this ascension. And I'm just going to kind of remove the name Wyndham Clark. Like, is he the real deal or not? Which I'll tell you, think about the guys who got their first win at the Wells Fargo Championship and what they ended up turning out to be. Max Homa, Rory McIlroy. Is Wyndham Clark now, like, Quail Hollow is no joke. Oak Hill is going to be no joke. What do you need at this course? Distance, yeah, Wyndham's got it. Elite iron play, yeah, Wyndham's got it. Salvageable short game, for sure. Good putter, yep, no problem. We've got a well-rounded bomber who can flush it. That is super scary. And now, is he confident? 6th in club head speed. You think that rough's going to be a problem for him? 20th in driving distance. Strokes gained approach, and this is, I'll go to the power rankings because we can actually give him a fair shake here. Last 36 rounds, strokes gained approach, Wyndham Clark is the 5th best player in the field. And honestly, Brooks Koepka and Phil Mickelson have a very, very small sample size, right? So if we even get rid of their live rounds and stuff like that, Wyndham Clark is the 3rd best approach player in this field. Scotty Scheffler, John Rahm, Wyndham Clark. There's only 5 guys who are gaining over a stroke per round. It's the full gamut, gaining across the board, full gamut. The game's there. I'll only say this once and I won't bother you with it anymore. If there was ever a time to consider Bryson, if he's going to be like 2% owned, I think it's now. You know, we talked about this maybe being like winged foot. We talked about where missing by a yard is going to be the same as missing by 25 and that the fairways are too small and all that stuff. This is the perfect setup for Bryson. If he was ever going to show signs of life, this is the perfect setup for Bryson. If not, we can just, this will be a good litmus test. We can just call him cooked, right? We can do that if he struggles here. Just had his best finish on live in a bunch of starts. T5 last week in Tulsa. He's been playing a little bit better. He's now gained strokes very minimally, but he has gained strokes total in 3 straight events, which is something he has not done since basically pre-injury, since the end of 2021. Then he got hurt. Then he came back, and it hasn't been good. It's been horrible. Last stuff on the PGA Tour was obscene. Live has not been good, but he has done something very low bar for the first time since the end of 2021. And now this is probably one of the better setups for him in the world. So just throwing it out there. I probably will not bother you with it for the rest of the week, but I think it is certainly worth considering. The bottom of the 7K range has to provide considerations of Gary Woodland, Keith Mitchell, and Siwoo Kim. You know, Gary Woodland, if he putts to a 0, probably contends this week. I saw him as long as 125 to 1 to win this golf tournament. He is back to driving it beautifully. He hasn't lost strokes off the tee since the first event of the season. That was back in September. His approach numbers are outrageously good. His putting numbers are outrageously bad. Can a former major winner summon a little bit of magic on the putting surfaces around Oak Hill this week? That question yet to be answered. The answer is probably not, but if he does, he's going to be contending a lot. Keith Mitchell, just elite driver of the golf ball, no doubt about that. And then Siwoo Kim, if you look at what Siwoo did, even over the last, 2 rounds on the weekend, this is the live leaderboard. So Siwoo Kim, Saturday and Sunday last week at the Byron Nelson, gains 3 strokes on approach. He loses a stroke and a half off the tee. Well, I'll tell you what, Siwoo is usually a very good driver of the golf ball, right? It's rare that he loses, and he loses that amount there. So you got to think, okay, that's going to bounce back. He was absolutely flushing it. He's got a great little short game. He's much better with the broomstick putter than he's ever been. So would not mind going to Siwoo here, offering a little bit of value at that lower $7,000 range. Before I show you the 6K range, let's talk about the trending tool. So this is also something I added last week, or 2 weeks ago, the strokes gained trend column, where we can kind of compare golfers against themselves and then to one another. And it basically says how hot is a golfer, how cold are they, and then how does that compare to one another. So for example, Rory McIlroy, who's been very cold over the last 36 rounds, a cold version of Rory McIlroy is still better than a hot version of Justin Rose, right? That's how this ends up shaking out. So Rory at 1.52 in strokes gained trend, Justin Rose 1.44. That's how that works. So what do we see? Well, we see Rahm, Scheffler, Cantlay, guys with massively high baselines are playing well above their baselines. Wyndham Clark, same thing. Xander Schauffele, this is another like really, like, I'm pretty sure Xander might win this golf tournament. Like, I'll tell you what, I'm going to be very focused on my betting card. It's going to be one of the big. It's going to be like Scotty. It's probably going to be Finau. It's probably going to be Xander, and that might be it. There might be one more that I will bet Victor, but like that, like it'll be very, very tight. Think about all the scary things that the field should be worried about when it comes to Xander Schauffele, and this one is even kind of the scariest. So the way this reads, last 36 rounds, Xander's actually been below his own baseline. He's losing about 0.12 strokes per round to himself. So his last 36 version is not even as good as his 100 round version, which is what a true DNA for a player is. That bad version of himself, or worse version than average of himself, is still the 5th best player in the field. What? That is terrifying, because you've got guys like Wyndham Clark playing way over his head. You have guys like Rahm and Scheffler playing way over his head. They're better than him, but you've got Hatton playing way over his head, doesn't sniff Xander. You've got, Ricky Fowler playing way over his head, doesn't sniff Xander. It really is impressive what he's been up to. So you love to see that. This is a breakout candidates chart where it shows, if everybody gets back to their putting baseline, who's the best kind of combination of hitting it well now and then putting it. Bo Hostler, Victor Hovland, Thomas Peters, Mito, some guys that kind of are in that correct quadrant that you would want to be in. Terrell Hatton, did I mention him? John Rahm as well. This bottom left quadrant, that's an okay one. That's the second best one you're in. Bryson and DJ trying to break out. The bottom right-hand quadrant is where you don't want to be. That's where, unfortunately, a lot of the live guys are getting punished because of their lack of stats and lack of rounds. But like HV3, Joaquin Niemann there, Luke Donald's there, Siwoo's on the border, Sam Ryder's there. Those are guys that you think are probably due to get a little beat up. Cam Smith probably going to get beat up around here as well. At least that's the concept here. $6,000 range. It is. I mean, it's a very deep field. I'll point out a couple of guys to you. If you're looking for just purely distance, Taylor Pendrith is here, one of the longer drivers on planet Earth, and this should be a better setup than most. Yannick Paul is somebody that I really like, and this is why I think it's important. Shameless plug here for RickRunGood.com, because I track 6 different tours: Live and Euro and Korn Ferry and PGA and the Senior Tour and the Asian Tour. You get a full, complete picture on these guys. So if you're only looking for PGA Tour results, you're not getting anything on Yannick Paul dating back to August of 2022. Well, he's a top 100 player in the world, and he's got a couple of really good finishes on the European Tour recently. Runner-up finish in Thailand, the T6, the ISPS Handa Championship, where and in those couple of events, I mean, he's gaining like an outrageous, the Hero Indian Open, he's gaining an outrageous amount of strokes from tee to green and in the ball striking categories, and he's pretty savvy throughout the entire bag. He won in Mallorca in October. If you're not looking at a site that If you're looking at a site that only has PGA Tour data, you've missed out on the ascension of Yannick Paul from the 1800th ranked player in the world to the 100th ranked player in the world. So that's like my biggest selling point, I think, for RickRunGood.com, that and the custom model. But like, the golf is a global game now. You need to have your eyes on global golf. I mean, Adrian Morank's another one. Adrian Morank is $6,700. He's coming off a win, right? He just won that event in Italy, wasn't it? Yeah, he won in Italy where he gained 8 strokes off the tee. He is routinely gaining a bunch of strokes off the tee. He can mash it, and you can see he got probably very lucky around the greens. He gained another 7.5 strokes there. That's unlikely to happen again. But it's not just this result. It was a T4 earlier. Then he played at Riviera and finished T45. Made the cut there. Played at Honda, one of the harder courses on the PGA Tour. Finished T14. Made a decent run to match play. He won the Australian Open in December. So he's got 2 wins in like 12 starts on the European Tour. DP World Tour Championship. That's like their stacked premier event, or one of them. 7th there at the end of last year. This guy can play and he can move it. Morank around Oak Hill feels like a pretty good setup for him. And obviously there are going to be guys like, Brian Harman. Brian Harman finished runner-up at an 8,000-yard Aaron Hills. Right? Like, there are going to be guys that pop up. I just think finding the guys that are better suited and taking our chances and piling up our small wins is probably the best way to go about doing this. One more for you. Here's Robert McIntyre. We know he can move it off the tee. Great driver. T7 in Korea, T6 at the ISPS Handa, T7 at the Kenya Open. Those are his last 3 starts. Very talented lefty who's putting it all together right now. I think there's a lot of value on the international guys, the guys that don't necessarily reside on the PGA Tour. Brendan Steele would be another one, $6,600. Brendan Steele, before he went to live, and I guess he still is, we just don't get the amount of metrics that we would before, would have done the things that we would have liked, right? This would have looked a lot like a light version of Gary Woodland, where he drives it well, hits it great on his second shot, just cannot putt it worth a lick. He's had a decent bit of success on live, T5 in Mayakoba, runner-up at Tucson, just finished T11 at Tulsa. Probably a pretty decent spot for him. Let's run a model. Custom model, RickRunGood.com. You can put in literally it's like 150 different options. I've been messing around with this obviously for a while since the pricing came out. But let me do this. I will do a couple of things. One, I need to just say you've got to be long here. So we're gonna put 20 on distance. Like, I'm just gonna do it. We're putting 20 on distance to combat some of the guys that might not have the driving distance stuff, depending on where they're coming from. I am also going to do something like this, where I'll just put like 5 on strokes gained off the tee, something like that. So we'll kind of double up on it. Now, I think you need to be a great approach player. So let's do strokes gained approach in the last 36 for 20. And I think you need to have an adequate short game and a decent putter. So let's go strokes gained around the green last 100, and then let's get you on bent grass for another 10 there. So I've used 65. Now I really do want to get I could double up and go like long golf courses, which I guess that is different than driving distance, right? It really is. So what I'll do is I'll put 10 on long courses and 10 on hard courses. Okay, so that's 85 of my weights I put in. I've got my strokes gained stuff. Let's do my scoring. Let's do bogey avoidance, right? Let's put 5 there, and then let's put 10 on fantasy points gained, and see that my number 1 golfer is, yeah, no surprise, Jon Rahm. Listen, when you start getting hard golf courses, long golf courses, major championship setups, stuff like this, you're going to get the big names. So we're going to look for outliers here. So here's my top 10. Rahm, Cantlay, Scheffler. Yeah, cool. Finau. Yep. Xander. Yep. Spieth at 6. Don't think I mentioned his name. Surprising. Not surprising that he shows up. He's got the major championship history, but like, that's pretty interesting for him to show there. Yeah, he gets pretty good grades everywhere. Gets good grades on long golf courses. His approach play has been phenomenal as of late. Around the green has obviously been stellar, so gets all that. Rory at 7, like, that would be a knock on Rory. Rory 7th is still a great rank, but when you're the 3rd most expensive golfer, or the 3rd in the betting odds, or the 2nd in the betting odds, depending on where you're at, like, that's a downgrade. Terrell Hatton, big upgrade. Terrell Hatton's $8,500. I have him 8th. How about this one? Ricky Fowler is 9th. Justin Thomas is 10th. Jay Day is 11. Wyndham Clark is 12. I'm going to keep going. Tommy Fleetwood is 13. I won't read you all of them, but those are some pretty interesting little nuggets there. Cam Young drops to 92nd hundred. He gets knocked on bogey avoidance. He gets knocked on his putting on bent grass. That's what's going on there. Just kind of going through and seeing some of the big outliers. This is incredible. I'm going to run about 100 more of these tonight, but yeah, so stoked for this week, and obviously much more to come. I'll give you as much insight as I can from Oak Hill. I'm headed out there now, and we'll go see what's happening. And yeah, I'm stoked. Sign up for the newsletter. Get a chance to win the rangefinder. Subscribe to the channel. Check out RickRunGood.com if you're so inclined. Wishing you guys the best of luck this week, and I'll talk to you soon.